Welcome to the virtual presentation of the North Los Angeles County Regional Center Self-Determination Orientation. The purpose of this orientation is so that you can learn about the self-determination program and understand how it can work for you. When we are done, we want you to feel confident that you can participate in the self-determination program and make good decisions for your own life. We also want you to know that you are never in this alone. We are here to help you sort it out and help make self-determination work for you. We are in this together. We have broken the topics we will talk about into 5 sections. In part 1, we will talk about the history and the important ideas behind self-determination. This is the big picture and will help you understand where the ideas for self-determination came from and what they mean. In part 2 and part 3, we will talk about the team of people who can work with you and what they can do. You don't go into self-determination by yourself. A lot of help is available. We will talk about the importance of good planning and the different parts of planning. Good planning is one of the most important things you can do to be sure that self-determination will work for you. This process is called person-centered planning, also known as PCP. In part 4, we will talk about how to put your plan into action. Once you have a good plan, it will tell you the steps to take to put that plan into action. Finally, in part 5, we will talk about safety. We will give you and your team the tools for you to be safe and recognize if someone is abusing you. Part 1, the big picture. In this section, we will discuss what self-determination is, a little bit about the history, and the 5 principles or main ideas that self-determination is built on. Having this information will provide you the tools to not only understand your rights as a participant, but it will also help you create a program that best suits your unique needs. The Lanterman Act was signed in 1969. This is the California law that says people with developmental disabilities and their families have a right to get services and supports they need to live like people without disabilities. The Lanterman Act establishes a service system to meet the individualized needs of consumers and, when appropriate, their families throughout the state. Additionally, the legislation establishes the process for determining and providing services. Over the years, this legislation has been amended to reflect the current needs of individuals with developmental disabilities. Self-determination is one of the biggest changes made to the Lanterman Act. Self-determination is a new way of accessing traditional services in a non-traditional way. It is voluntary, which means you can decide if you want to stay with traditional regional center services or try self-determination instead. If you decide to transition into the self-determination program and you feel that it is not meeting your needs, you can always contact your assigned service coordinator and request to exit the program. Let's talk about how service delivery is different. At the very basic level, when you have a need, you typically ask the regional center for funding, and after assessing, they either agree or disagree to fund. Traditional regional center services could only be funded through a contracted vendor. In self-determination, you start the person-centered planning process by holding a meeting with your team to determine your needs. Regional Center then establishes a budget based on last year's usage, also known as a 12-month expenditure report, and unmet needs. If you did not receive services in the past year, a budget would be developed based on unmet needs. Together with your regional center and your team, you will develop a spending plan through the individual program plan, also known as the IPP process. We will talk about how all of this works as we go along in the presentation. There are 5 very important principles that self-determination is based on. The first principle is freedom. You plan your own life and make your own decisions, just like people without disabilities are able to do. Principle 2, authority. You decide how money is spent for your services and supports. Once your budget and spending plan are approved, you will have the authority to use your budget in the way that makes the most sense to you. Principle 3, support. You pick the people and supports that help you live, work, and play in your community. We will talk about your team of supporters in section 2. Principle 4, responsibility. To make decisions in your life, to be accountable for using public money, and to accept your valued role in the community. It is important to remember that with freedom and authority comes responsibility. Principle 5, confirmation. You are the most important person when making plans for your life. You are the decision maker about your services. Self-determination is not a new program. Other states have been utilizing self-determination for many years. California had a pilot project with 5 regional centers for almost 20 years. The pilot program has been successful thus far. As previously mentioned, you can choose whether or not you want to be a part of the self-determination program. The program is voluntary. You can choose to stay in the self-determination program or go back to traditional regional center services at any time. Additionally, the self-determination program moves with you if you move to a new area in California and change regional centers. When you are in the self-determination program, you have all of the same rights that you've always had. You have the right to make your own decisions, to be included in your community, and you have the right to have support to live the life you want. You also have the right to disagree and appeal regional centers' decisions. Let's review what we just covered. The Lanterman Act was amended to include the self-determination program. The 5 principles that we discussed are freedom, authority, support, responsibility, and confirmation. You have the freedom to make your own choices about your life and future, the authority to spend money in ways that work for you, and the choice to choose the people who are going to support you. With flexibility means you are going to have more responsibility too. Make sure your plan works. Lastly, confirmation. You want to make sure that you are the decision maker. Another way to think about this is nothing about me without me, which means you get to decide on your plan. Self-determination is not a new program, and you have the right to disagree and appeal regional centers' decisions. Part 2, your team. In this next section, we will talk about the team of people who are there to help you and support you in the self-determination program. You don't have to do this by yourself. We will discuss the different kinds of things that people can do to support you. By you, I mean the participant. For minors, the parents will be the decision makers, and for adults, it would be the participant, unless they are conserved. The self-determination program is for you, so you are the leader of the team. You have the freedom, authority, and responsibility to make all of the decisions about your plan and how your budget will be spent. Your team is there to help you figure out your plan and make your plans a reality. Different members of your team will have different jobs, but they all have one responsibility: to help you live the life you want. Let's talk next about who can be there to support you. After you, the most important people are the people important to you. These are the people who already know you, care for you, and people you trust. These can be friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, and others you want and who know you well. You can invite anyone you want to be a part of your self-determination team. It is a good idea to invite people who you know well, people you trust, and people who want to be a part of your self-determination team. It is also very important that the people you invite want to support what you want and don't try to take over. The independent facilitator, also known as the IF, is someone you can hire if you want to, but it is not mandatory. The independent facilitator can do many different things. It will be up to you what you want them to do. You can hire almost anyone you want to be your independent facilitator. For example, a family member or a friend. But there are a few rules. They have to be trained on how to be an independent facilitator. A lot of organizations offer this training. The parent of a person under the age of 18 or the spouse of a participant cannot be paid to be the independent facilitator. The parent of a person over the age of 18, however, can be paid to be the facilitator. You can pay for the independent facilitator out of your budget, or you can find someone who might not charge you anything. Your service coordinator can be the independent facilitator, and services are free and will not come out of your budget. There are limitations for service coordinators being the independent facilitator. Service coordinators can only be contacted during their scheduled working hours. They cannot negotiate rates with the vendors and providers. They cannot find vendors or providers outside of NLACRC, and they cannot be paid to provide the independent facilitation. You are not required to hire an independent facilitator. It is completely up to you. It is important to know that your independent facilitator cannot provide any other service to you, with the exception of your assigned service coordinator, who will continue to provide case management services. For example, your independent facilitator cannot also be hired as your respite provider. Some of the types of jobs a facilitator might do include helping you organize meetings, helping you develop your person-centered plan, helping you plan and maintain your spending plan, helping you find other people who might be able to support you, helping you find providers, negotiating rates, hours of service, and writing contracts, making sure providers do what they agree to do, helping resolve problems with others, helping you and your team understand and live by the principles of the self-determination program. It is important to find the right person to be your independent facilitator if you decide to have one. You want to be sure that they have the right skills for what you need. You will need someone who understands you, what you want, and what you need. They should be a hard worker and well organized. They have to be trained in independent facilitation and person-centered planning. If your independent facilitator is eligible to be paid, they will need to provide the assigned service coordinator with proof of training. And very importantly, you should like the person. The Financial Management Service, or the FMS, is another important part of your team. Their main job is to hold the money in your budget and handle everything related to that money. You are required to use a fiscal management service. The FMS is hired by you from a list provided by the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS. They will hold and manage your money, but they do not make budget decisions. The FMS makes payments to service providers. They also make sure that the people you hire can do the job that they're hired for. They have to make sure that the service providers can legally work. They help complete background checks and criminal record checks on the individuals you wish to hire. They also keep all financial records and reports and will send you a monthly report to make sure you are staying within your budget. In addition to the tasks that we just talked about, the FMS can do some other jobs if you want them to. The first thing that you will have to decide is this: will you hire people to work for you? If you will hire people, there are two options that we will discuss next. There are three options to using an FMS. One is sole employer. You are the boss. Two is co-employer. You choose your employees, and the FMS takes care of all of the employer responsibilities. Or three, bill payer. If you will hire employees, one way you can do that is to be their employer. This option is known as sole employer. Sole employer makes you the boss. The FMS will pay the bills and help you understand your responsibilities as the employer. But most of the responsibility will be on you. You will need to make sure to do their payroll taxes, workers' compensation, deductions, anything that an employer has to do under labor laws. The FMS will not help you do this under this model. Another option is that you share the job with your FMS agency. This option is called co-employer. You can choose who you want to hire, and the FMS is their actual employer, called the employer of record. This means that the FMS has more of the responsibility. When developing your spending plan, the employer burden must be identified. The employer burden is the amount you pay your employees, including their paycheck and any additional benefits that you are responsible for. These additional costs include things like insurance, paid time off, bonuses, or any other expense. Since the FMS is the employer, additional monies must be allocated to reflect these costs. If you don't plan on hiring employees directly, then the FMS will only be paying bills. This option is called bill payer. You would choose this option when goods or services are purchased from a business. When you hire people through an agency, then that agency is the employer, not you or the FMS. The FMS agency is paid a monthly fee. These fees are currently funded by NLACRC, and funds for these monthly fees do not come out of the individual budget. The FMS monthly fees are based on the FMS model that you choose and how many employees and/or providers that are included on your spending plan. Tips for selecting an FMS. When selecting any provider, you are encouraged to interview several. You can ask your independent facilitator for help when selecting an FMS provider. You can ask for referrals from other participants. NLACRC has a support group for families interested in SDP as well as families already in SDP. You can join the support group to ask for referrals from other participants and their families. You can join the monthly self-determination program local advisory committee meetings. You can also ask other participants on the State Council Facebook page. And there's also a list of the FMS agencies available on the DDS website. Some questions you may want to ask your FMS agency are: what is your experience? Which models of financial management service do you provide? How will you help me with my spending plan? What are your procedures to onboard staff and providers? Will you send me monthly reports on my budget and spending? If I am spending more than I should in my spending plan, how will you tell me? How much do you know about California's self-determination program? How will you communicate with me? If you are a co-employer, what role will you play in the hiring of my employees? What if I want to hire someone that you don't like? Would you ever ask me to fire one of my workers, and for what reason? How will you get timesheets from my workers? And if I have questions, how will I get them answered? Your Regional Center Service Coordinator is another part of your team. One of their biggest jobs is to figure out what your budget will be during the IPP meeting through traditional services. The Service Coordinator, along with the Self-Determination Specialist, will also help you understand and follow the rules of self-determination. If you choose not to have a paid independent facilitator, then your Service Coordinator can be your independent facilitator. An SDP coach is available upon request through NLACRC. They will assist with navigating the process through the transition from traditional services into the self-determination program. You can request an SDP coach through your service coordinator. As a review, you are the one in control. You decide who will be part of your team and who will help you develop your plan for the future. You can decide if you want to hire an independent facilitator or not. You can choose to pay for their services or not. Your service coordinator from the Regional Center can also be your independent facilitator at no charge to you. Remember, you are required to hire an FMS agency. The FMS will help you with the people you choose to work for you and will help you pay your bills. Lastly, your service coordinator will continue to play an important role in self-determination. He or she will help you understand the rules of self-determination, help develop your budget, spending plan, and complete the IPP. Part 3, Planning. There is a lot of planning that goes into the self-determination program. In this section, we will talk about person-centered planning, your budget and spending plan, and how your IPP fits into all of it. Person-centered planning is done with your team of people. Having a comprehensive plan is a good foundation for a smooth transition into the self-determination program. The person-centered plan will tell us more about the participant and their needs. There are many ways of doing a person-centered plan, but all of them should identify the individual's hopes and dreams, identify what the individual likes and what they are good at, identify and set meaningful goals for their life, and choose providers for the services and supports that will help them meet their goals. Person-centered planning always starts by thinking about the best things about you. You and your team will talk about and write down what your interests are, what you are talented at, what things you are good at doing, and what your hopes and dreams are for your future. Once you have decided on your goals, you will work with your team to figure out the steps to reach your goals. You do this by figuring out how to get from where you are now to where you want to be. You can also decide who will help you with each step and how long each step might take. The other part of planning is talking about staying healthy and safe. This means discussing what you need to have in your life, such as services and supports that help you stay healthy and safe. What is important to you is different than what is important for you. For example, you may want to eat cookies all day, but you need to eat fruits and vegetables to keep your body healthy. The next step is to talk about money. It is important to remember that the regional center is the payer of last resort, which means you must access generic resources first. We'll talk more about this in the next slide. The budget is based on annualized expenditures and/or unmet needs. This is the money you will use to develop your spending plan. The spending plan puts your person-centered plan into action. In the next few slides, we will talk about each of these. There are agencies and organizations that may have the responsibility to pay for certain parts of your care and services. These are generic resources. For example, insurance, including Medi-Cal, typically pays for healthcare needs. They can also pay for behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. For example, if your child needs behavioral therapy, you will need to attempt to access the service through your insurance before making the request to the regional center. If your insurance denies, the regional center may be able to assess. For those who have Medi-Cal, In-Home Support Services, or IHSS, is a possible service that can provide funding for things like in-home care, protective supervision, and supportive living services. If you receive IHSS, the regional center would need to consider IHS hours when determining services such as personal assistance. If the participant has an active IEP in a K-12 public school, the school would be responsible for academic development, accommodations, physical, speech, and occupational therapy, and counseling as well. For example, if your child needs a communication device to use at home, if the school district denies, then regional center can consider funding. If you have exhausted all generic resources and you still need services and support, then the regional center can consider funding. This rule still exists when you are in the self-determination program. So how does the regional center determine your budget? The first thing your service coordinator will do is figure out how much money was spent on your services and supports for the last 12 months. This is known as the 12-month expenditure report. But maybe in your person-centered plan, you have figured out that you have some other needs that are unmet, or maybe you haven't fully utilized services due to extenuating circumstances. For example, you may have an authorization for respite services, but you have not used it due to staffing issues. Or you are graduating high school this year and you would like to sign up for a vocational training program. These are considered unmet needs. You will review your unmet needs with your IPP team to determine if your budget can increase. Your budget can increase to meet those needs. Another way your budget can increase or decrease is if your life has changed in some big way. For example, maybe you have just graduated from high school and now you need support to find a job or look for your own apartment. The regional center could increase your budget to meet these new needs. If the regional center did not spend any money on you for the last 12 months, they will take a look at what you need and how much money they would usually spend to meet those kinds of needs. This would be the basis for your budget. Now that you know what generic resources are paying for and you have your budget, you and your team will figure out your spending plan. You will decide how much money from your budget will be used for each part of your plan. It is important to figure this out carefully. Part of the job of your team will be to help you work out your spending plan. Once you have completed your draft spending plan, please send it to your chosen FMS agency for their review to ensure that all SDP rules are being followed. Once you have decided on your spending plan, the independent facilitator will help you separate the money into 3 categories: living arrangements, employment and community participation, and health and safety. Living arrangements consist of respite services, live-in caregiver, homemaker, housing access supports, and community living supports. Some examples of employment and community participation are pre-vocational support, independent facilitator, technology services, individual training and education, and participant-directed goods and services. Finally, health and safety consists of services like behavioral intervention services, family and consumer training, dental services, chiropractic services, vehicle modifications and adaptations, and specialized medical equipment and supplies. There are rules about how you can spend your self-determination budget. The money can be used for services and supports that help you live a life like people without disabilities live. The rules are there to help you be more included in your community, help you be as independent as possible, help you reach your goals that you have chosen, or help you stay healthy and safe. The money cannot be used to pay for services that keep you separate from people without disabilities. It is your service coordinator's job to make sure that your spending plan follows these rules. If you have set aside some of the money for something that is not allowed, your service coordinator will let you know and help you figure out how to follow the rules. Remember that you have to utilize generic resources first. Think about 1 to 2 services that you are hoping to receive through SDP funding. Take the service you are thinking about and ask yourself, what is the purpose of this service? Is this a need or a want? And is there another entity that can provide this service? Let's say the service you are thinking about is tutoring, and the purpose is for the participant to develop language skills. Would this be a need or a want? This may be a need. Is there another entity that is responsible for providing the service? Yes, this is an academic goal, therefore the school district would be responsible for assessing the need in this area. Once you transition into the self-determination program, this means that your budget and spending plan have been certified and you are ready to go. If you need to change your spending plan and move money from one budget category to another due to unforeseen circumstances, you may do so. If it is 10% or less, you can move it by contacting your service coordinator and informing them the changes you will be making. The spending plan will need to be revised to reflect the changes. If it is more than 10%, you will need to contact your service coordinator to schedule an IPP meeting to discuss the changes. If the regional center agrees, the IPP will be amended and the change will be processed. The spending plan will need to be revised to reflect the changes. If you have an emergency that can potentially change your needs and spending plan, please contact your service coordinator. Finally, you will still need an individualized program plan or an IPP. This is still your contract with the regional center. The IPP will be based on your person-centered plan, but they are not the same thing. Your service coordinator is responsible for the IPP and will meet with you to develop it just as they always have. Your IPP will include parts of your person-centered plan and your spending plan. So let's summarize and review what we just talked about. Person-centered planning is the process used to talk about what is important to you and how you want to live your life. The team of people you trust and care about will help you with this. It should identify what your goals are, the steps you will need to take to achieve your goals, and the supports and services you will need in your life. Your individual budget was created using your 12-month expenditure report and certified by the Regional Center. Once the budget has been certified, a spending plan needs to be created. The spending plan has 3 categories: living arrangement, community and participation and employment, and health and safety. Your team will decide together how much money goes into each category. The spending plan should include the service type, the category, frequency, the rate, and the annualized amount. The Regional Center will approve the spending plan, and this will be need to send to your FMS agency. The IPP is the document that the Regional Center will create based on your person-centered plan. The spending plan will be attached to the IPP when it is completed and sent to you. We recommend that you go to the DDS website and review self-determination program service definitions before you create the spending plan. Now that your plan has been developed, it is time to put that plan into action. In this section, we will talk about who can help you, how you can find resources, hire people, get background checks, and buy what you need. Anyone can help you put your plan into action. You might have your independent facilitator help you, your service coordinator, your family, or your friends. It is best if you involve the team of people who helped you with your person-centered plan. From your person-centered plan, you already know what kinds of resources you will need to find. Most neighborhoods have business districts where you can find a lot of things that might meet your needs. You can also search online or talk to people you know about what you are looking for. Remember to keep in mind the rules that you must follow when identifying resources. They have to be on a list of allowable services, and you need to make sure that you are receiving these services as part of your community. The main difference between traditional regional center services and the self-determination program is that you can hire whoever you want. You do not have to use a contracted vendor. As we discussed earlier in this presentation, you can be the sole employer, which means you will have most of the responsibility. Or you can choose to be a co-employer, and the FMS agency you choose will have most of the responsibility. Or you may choose the bill payer model, where the FMS pays for services through agencies. You will interview people that you are interested in and then decide who you want. If they don't work for an agency and are going to work directly for you, the FMS agency will help you with this hiring process. It is good to hire people who will understand your needs, maybe speak the same language as you, and someone who understands your culture. Individuals you want to hire directly will have to go through a criminal background check. The FMS agency will help you with this. The background check will show if the people you want to hire have a criminal record or not. If they do, you cannot hire them. We will talk more about this in the safety section of the presentation. You and your new employee should make a contract. The contract should describe everything you want the person to do for you, what their work days and hours will be, what you will pay them, and other important details. You can also ask your independent facilitator or another person on your team to help you write a good contract. This is part of your responsibility, and you want to make sure that the people you hire will follow your contract. Let's imagine that you chose the sole employer model, and your goal is to have your own apartment. You will need to make money to be able to pay for rent. Therefore, it has been determined that you will need help finding and maintaining a good-paying job. You will need to hire someone. As sole employer, you will need to interview candidates, conduct background checks, create a contract, and you'll be responsible for taxes, workers' compensation, and payroll. If your employee wants benefits, you may need to consider this. Upon hiring this individual, you will be responsible for training him or her on what their job responsibility is. This model requires most of the responsibility from your part. In the self-determination program, you do not have to use a contracted vendor. Let's say that you are an adult participant that needs prescription eyeglasses and Medi-Cal has denied funding. You bring the denial letter to the regional center, and the regional center has agreed to fund for your glasses. That means that you can take the money and purchase the glasses from Walmart, Costco, or any store that sells glasses. Some of the items you may purchase are safety bars, ramps to make your living space more accessible, a communication device, day-to-day items like medical supplies, and other items that may assist with making you as independent as possible. Remember, these types of items will need to be reviewed by your IPP team to ensure that they are not available through generic or private resources. It is important for you to use your team to put your plan into action. As you and your team try to find the resources and people who will be working to support you, you need to make sure that you choose the right providers who will help you meet your goals. Since you will now be responsible for choosing your supports and services, you have to make sure that the people who will work for you will keep you safe. Your FMS agency will help you with this by doing background checks to make sure that the individuals working for you don't have a criminal record. Your IPP team will assist you with purchasing authorized items. Our last topic is safety. We will talk more about background checks and abuse. If the person you want to hire is going to help you with your personal care, they have to go through a criminal record check before you can hire them. The FMS agency will give them the paperwork they need and tell them where to go to get a fingerprint background check. The person you want to hire may have to pay for the background check. Some FMS agencies may cover the cost of the background check, but you will need to check in with your chosen FMS agency. The consumer or the family should never have to pay for a background check. It can take a couple of days or longer to get the results of the background check. This is an important step to be sure that the person you want to hire does not have a criminal record. A fingerprint background check is a way to find out if someone has a criminal record. If they don't have a criminal record, then they can start to work for you. If the person has a record for a minor crime, like disturbing the peace, the Department of Developmental Services will need to approve this individual. If the person was convicted of a major crime, like abuse or a felony charge, they cannot work for you. The last topic that we will cover is about abuse. It is important for you and your team to understand what abuse is, how to recognize that you might be getting abused, and what to do about it. There are different types of abuse. If someone takes or uses your money or possessions for themselves, that's financial abuse. If someone who is supposed to take care of you ignores you and doesn't help you take care of your needs like eating, toileting, cleaning yourself, brushing your teeth, this is called neglect. If someone physically hurts you, that is physical abuse. If a person touches private parts of your body without permission or has sex with you without your permission, that is sexual abuse. If someone yells at you or makes you feel bad or ashamed, that is emotional abuse. The people who support you need to learn the signs of possible abuse that they should pay attention to. If the person is upset for long periods of time without an obvious reason, if they have lost their confidence or the skills they used to have, if they seem frightened much of the time, if they lash out or are aggressive in ways they haven't been before, or if they withdraw and don't want to have contact with others, these may be signs that the person is being abused in some way. For you, there are ways you can recognize that you are being abused or mistreated. It is never okay if someone hurts you, makes you feel bad or ashamed, gets too close to you or makes you uncomfortable, takes your money or possessions, or touches you in any way without your permission. These may be signs that someone is abusing you. Whenever you feel threatened or unsafe, it is very important to tell someone you trust so that they can help you stay safe and make a report of abuse if needed. If you don't know who to tell, you can always contact your service coordinator. As a review, the individuals you hire who will work directly with you and help you live your life day to day, like making sure you have food to eat and that you are eating, that your home is cleaned, and that you're wearing clean clothes, and that you're going out into the community, will have to be fingerprinted and go through a background check. The individuals you choose to work for you cannot have a major criminal record. Your FMS agency will help you with this administrative process. And abuse is never okay. You and the people close to you have to communicate to make sure you are safe and that no one is abusing you. If you believe that someone is, you need to make sure that you let someone know right away so that the right authorities can be notified and this can be investigated. Self-determination is a program that gives you flexibility, but there are rules you must follow. With flexibility, you do have more responsibility. You are not alone. Your team should be made up of people you trust, who care about you, and who know you well. Your team will help you plan for the life you choose to live. Remember, nothing about me without me. Use your team to put your plan into action. Your family, friends, employers, and service coordinator are all available to help you. And no one has the right to abuse you. If this happens, you need to let someone know right away so they can help you with the situation. Moving through the process of the self-determination program. The program starts with the mandatory orientation, and then the next step is the person-centered planning. The person-centered planning is optional. The next step is to have an IPP meeting with your service coordinator and agree on traditional regional center services that will be translated into a budget. The budget would then be certified. You would choose your FMS agency and finalize your spending plan, and then services and supports would begin. This is a list of the SDP team. For all general SDP questions, you can use the NLACRC SDP email at self-determination@nlacrc.org. SDP coaching. NLACRC has teamed up with independent facilitators for SDP coaching. These independent facilitators can help support the transition to the self-determination program, or when already in the self-determination program and needing extra support at no cost to you. Please ask your service coordinator to submit a referral to the SDP team if you are interested in SDP coaching. The Self-Determination Program Support Group for NLACRC. They meet on the first Wednesday of every month from 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. You do need to register in advance for this meeting. You can find the registration for this meeting on the NLACRC website, either at the calendar of events or on the Self-Determination Program page. Spanish interpretation is provided. The Self-Determination Advisory Committee. The purpose of this committee is to provide oversight of the self-determination program and to give consumers and families a voice in the development and implementation of the self-determination program. They meet on the third Thursday of every month from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. You can find these meetings on the NLACRC website on the calendar of events. Guests are welcome to attend these meetings. The contact information for the Self-Determination Advisory Committee is nlacrcsdlac@gmail.com. Spanish interpretation is provided. Disability Rights California. They host an SDP Connect that is a weekly information sharing Zoom meeting for self-determination program participants for all of California family members, independent facilitators, FMS agencies, regional center staff, service providers, and anyone else who is interested in moving the self-determination program forward. Some additional resources is the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Developmental Services, and the Financial Management Services Agency's contact information. Thank you for attending the North Los Angeles County Regional Center's Self-Determination Orientation.